and they're basically going to be solving that. So you can see we've already kicked off.
So it goes A through K, is that right?
Yeah, A through K. And so if you're a team from some region, you've already solved this problem to get here. Unless for some reason you were trolling the scoreboard and skipped the easiest problem and only solved the harder one. I feel like that's fairly unlikely.
That's actually a really interesting point, because often in these ICPC style contests, you'll see kind of like the first 2 or 3 problems, like a lot of teams are working on those, and then much later on, someone starts solving one of the later problems and so on. But in this format, it's kind of like just for this practice round only, every team has a different problem that's their easiest problem because they've done it before, right? So it's like we might see all of the problems solved by a couple teams instead of a few of the easy problems that are captured first.
You can just like go after the problem that's coming from your region.
Yeah.
And hope, or you can solve one of the other ones. I know that the easiest problem varies between regions, so there is a little bit of a distribution, but it's all on that lower end. Like these could have all been easiest problems in each other's region. So
cool. Yeah, makes sense. Do you want to talk a bit about the the scoring system, like the penalty and so on?
Yeah, those who aren't familiar with ICPC style scoring, you basically get a point every time a problem is solved. Always that's like the first tiebreaker is how many problems you've been solved. And then you break ties within problem solved by penalty points, which that system's a little bit more complicated. You can think of it as you have a clock for every single problem, and as soon as you solve that problem, you stop the clock, and that gives you your penalty time. So that only gets added if you've solved the problem. And then extra, to give extra penalties for lots of wrong submissions, every time a problem incorrectly, it's 20 minutes of penalty time that's added to that score. So if you are at the end of the contest on a problem you don't end up solving, none of that penalty time gets added to your score.
It's only for the ones that you solve.
It's only for the ones that you solve. So there's no penalty at the end if you are absolutely trying to get one more problem. You should do everything you can to get that last problem.
Yeah, exactly. So the system is set so that you don't have any weird incentives where you have to think about,
like, should I use another submit because I'll drop down a place? No, it's all about getting those top problems. It's always better to get more problems. So submissions are always worth it, but you want to reduce the number of wrong submits. Don't have as much penalty time, because a lot of times that ends up being world finals or not. There'll be multiple teams.
Multiple teams had
some
our
number
sad stories in the past. Yeah. By the way, we just actually got our first submission passing here from University of Michigan. And they just solved problem B. It's about 3 minutes.
Yeah. First solve 1 minute. Is that 1 minute?
I
3 minutes in.
So they submitted at 1 minute 50 or something, and it took a minute to judge, and then they came in. It
finally gets shown. That's a really fast time.
Yeah, super cool. But yeah, I mean, you were saying about the penalty. I think, it makes sense. Like you're trying to solve as many problems as possible, but there actually is a lot of interesting kind of strategy when you're thinking about these wrong submissions. Go ahead. I think we have to keep the yellow one up. Yeah. Okay. Does it show up at the top? Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, and you were saying a penalty per wrong submit, and there's some interesting trade-offs there because, as a team you only have one computer, right? So yeah, it is true that you can try to do a lot of submits, and you're thinking about the -20 and what that'll mean. But at the same time, you're also spending time on your computer when one of your teammates could be coding something else. Often you'll see it where people are debugging on paper, so they'll just figure out the bug or how to optimize or whatever it is that they need to fix while somebody else is coding, and then they can take turns and switch off.
Yeah, when I was competing, it was always you get an idea for a problem, and your teammate also has an idea for a problem.
Yeah.
So what do you end up doing? Well, you end up coding on paper. And so I don't know too many people outside of programming contests that do program on paper. But it's really important in this contest because you have this bottleneck that you have to deal with of coding on the computer. And so you want to reduce the amount of time that you're spending on the computer as much as possible. So one of the strategies is just do all your coding on paper or write enough on paper so that you're basically just reacting when you're writing the code.
Right.
Like figuring out the problem as you're coding it.
Right. A couple other submissions came in just now. University of Alberta got H, University of Rochester got I, Washington St. Louis got D, and then University of Toronto got C. So almost exactly what we were saying, where a lot of different problems are getting solved early. By the way, I think the number is actually just the number of problems
solved.
So it's not the minute. So maybe that first submission was actually 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, let's get
much
all
less
the
impressive, you know.
Let's get all the embarrassing commentary and misreading the scoreboard out of the way in this like very critical dress rehearsal. And then we can, when we get to the real contest, we'll look much more impressive.
A couple other submissions on D, UT Austin, University of Nebraska. Swarthmore just got E, and then I believe after a wrong submission from earlier.
Do we know how many unique problems have been solved?
I think it's 6.
Wow.
I think it's B, C, D, E, H, I. MIT's coming in on K. So, wrong answer.
Wrong answer. First wrong answer I've seen.
Yeah. And like we're saying, it's like you should have done this problem at your regional, so it's, it's not obvious why.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if K was from the MIT
region.
Interesting.
So maybe they just went for a different problem. Yeah. I mean, there's another kind of like at the beginning. First team with 2 problems. This is an MSOE got both I and D. Do you know which school MSOE is or where they're from? Oh, wow, Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Cool. Yeah. So first team on the board with 2 problems now, and we'll see that continue. I was just going to say, so on top of that question of like having multiple problems to solve and like, not being sure which one to code first, there's also the question of like, even at the very beginning of the contest, which problems you read, right? And so, when I was doing it, or I guess even now when I'm still doing ICPC style contests, it's kind of like, person starts from the front, one person looks in the middle. And there's kind of different sets that come up. Sometimes they will be somewhat ordered in terms of difficulty, and in that case you want your fast person to be working on the easy problems. Sometimes they're not, and so you kind of have to look around and like really figure out which ones are the ones to go for.
Yeah, so when you were competing, Scott, if you found the easiest problem, did you have a dedicated person that would always code the easiest, or did you do handoffs? Like that, or is it the person who found it?
So I think in contests, I've usually had the reputation of being the person who was fast at typing, at solving hard problems. So there is a nice trade-off there where it would make sense for me to code up a lot of the easier problems while my teammates were solving some of the harder problems. I think it's hard to say though, because obviously like. There's time to prepare the program as well. And so, often those minutes will help a lot. Like even when you're not at the keyboard, taking 2 minutes to think through, all right, how do I do these arrays? Or, do I want to do this forward or in reverse? Or all these little details like that really matter. I mean, sometimes it is nice, even if you're like the dedicated coder, to have at least like one problem in between where you can kind of just like get in the right mindset for these next couple problems that you're going to code. Looks like we have 5 teams now actually at 2 problems. So University of Michigan is leading in terms of penalty. Looks like their penalty is 11 minutes. So I think that's a 3 plus an 8 or something like that. We have Swarthmore as well. NEU just came in for 2 problems too. And then University of Toronto. There's a couple others that we're not seeing on the list. Washington St. Louis also on 2 problems. And missions can't come in. I'm not sure at this point how many problems have been solved. It's at least 2 more than before. Yep. Yeah, at this point, something like 20, 30 teams on the scoreboard, 25 teams, I think.
20, 30 teams that have at least one problem solved. Somewhere between 20 and 30. And
wow, Swarthmore just got to the 3rd problem.
Yeah, Swarthmore is going for the full solve right away.
Yeah.
So again, not entirely representative of the contest because a lot of the teams are also using this time to test the system. So even if they're a really fast team, they're not going to this contest.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, so one of these teams just got a compile error. Which is like, in the actual contest is, I think, rare to see, but here totally reasonable to test, right? You want to know what version exactly of C++, what OS, little things that could make the difference there. Harvard just got their first problem. We have MSOE on problem 3, and they passed. Wow, so they're number 1 now. leading Swarthmore a bit by penalty. But yeah, totally like you're saying. I think like obviously teams that are solving 3 problems, in the span of 10 minutes are very good. But there's also likely some pretty good teams that have kind of just held off on learning the system and making sure they're comfortable.
Right. Yeah, you definitely want to use this time to test the system. I think one of the critical things that a lot of teams test nowadays is like how deep can you go on the stack. So if you're doing any kind of recursion, like some of these like crazy DFS problems, you really want to test the stack, test how much stack space you have, because the systems, the way it's set up, might not be set up the way that your machine would be set up. And so you don't want to like waste penalty points and submissions testing it during the actual contest. But right now, none of this, all these penalty points will go away when we get to the actual contest. So.
Yeah, there's a funny part of this too, which is that you can have pre-written code, you can have book code, right? But you have to type it yourself. So you can only bring the print copies. And so, for example, like on my home machine, I'll have things with the stack, like the ulimit dash app. But but here there's a question of like, if you don't need it, why take the time at the start of the contest to have to type all of that up? I know a lot of contestants have their own templates. Also, Swarthmore had 4, so they're killing it right now.
They're going for that full AC. They want all 11 problems, less than an hour.
Solve all the problems in 30 minutes, and then we'll figure out how this is.
And then we'll do the testing. Well, actually, I think in some ways this is a good strategy to actually run through, try to solve all the problems, because there are a lot of variable factors in the contest setting that you want to get used to. You want to have everyone typing on the keyboard, because it's not a keyboard you'll be familiar with. And so that can affect your typing speed a little bit. If it's not a keyboard you're comfortable with, you want to get as many reps as possible on that. So going after the problems at contest speed can be too.
UBC just got their first problem J. So those were one of the teams we were talking about earlier. Potentially a strong showing. So.
Yeah, strong team. So do you have opinions on what you know about the teams and what teams you think particularly strong?
I mean, as far as kind of like, I'll say the region or, North America overall, MIT, known for doing pretty well. They often have a strong team, especially a strong team, I think. UCF often has a very, very strong team. Harvard, I have to say, Harvard is my alma mater, but Harvard often has a strong team. I think this year.
Several former USICO students are on that team.
And then on the West Coast, I mean, we've got the typical hard hitters. We got Stanford, Berkeley this year. I think UBC, like we were saying, has a really strong team. But yeah, it kind of goes all over. I mean, I think that's the whole idea of this new format, right? Is because we've seen a lot of these teams that haven't really had an event where we get to see them all going off against each other in as much of a format.
With the high, the precursor to this event that I guess we should talk about was
Swarthmore on 5, by the way. That's crazy.
Swarthmore 5. They're really going for that speed. It'll be interesting to see how this holds up in the real contest. But that is really impressive speed to get 5 problems this quickly. But going back to it, the precursor to this contest being the Chicago Invitational. So I and one of the other commentators, Nick, competed in the first one in 2012, and then became the NAIPC. So this was originally an on-site event, and then kind of transferred contests that was online only for a number of years. But that allowed us to collect a lot of judges to get involved with the contest, make sure we could write something that is a World Finals level set or approaching World Finals level set.
Swarthmore on 6 now, actually. We're looking at the scoreboard. We got first place at 6, second place at 4, no one else with more than 3, so pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah. Getting those first submissions and getting their fingers fresh on a new keyboard, testing the submission system, making sure they understand like the order of getting back wrong answer, runtime error, that sort of thing, testing memory limits, because this is the exact environment they'll be competing on tomorrow.
And do you know what the highlighted rows mean? So I see like. Okay. Gotcha.
Is that what the star means?
The star? Is that?
4 stars. So you
Uh-huh.
can see the 4 stars.
And then do you know about the green, like the highlighted green notice?
The green is it's like these teams qualify for, I believe it's these teams that technically qualify for if all of the, if this is like, or these teams are all eligible for.
What do you mean eligible for
Yeah.
awards?
So
Sorry.
an award being like for their
I see.
So now we're getting the distribution of solves. So D seems to be the most popular problem. So the easiest of the easy problems from
Yep.
all the regions. And is getting the most attention. Nobody still solved F.
Yeah, and as of last, I mean, A and G, I think were both solved in the last 1 or 2 minutes, so pretty interesting as well. Do we have the problems on us? Maybe we can talk about F since this is the last
So
unsolved.
if you want to run to the judges.